Moana, and then I'll just introduce us and say,
I've
hi,
also
everyone.
I've got a friend who's I've got a friend who specializes in this too. So yeah.
Hello. Hi, everyone. It's Angela here from She Simply Impacts, and we've got a fabulous team on board today to have a great panel discussion on psychological safety. So we've got Sabina here, Moana Robinson, Sabine Armbruster, and the amazing Indrani. And so I'm going to hand it over to Sabina to get started with the first question.
Well, thank you, Angela. I have just asked the group a question, hence why I'm the first one asking this question. And the question was, psychological safety for me is such a huge topic. What do we actually mean by psychological safety and what's included? It's huge. Who wants to start? Indrani, go.
Okay, I'll start. So we all know physical safety, right? Physical safety, physiologically, that we're safe. There's no harm to our physical well-being. We can go somewhere and be safe. There's no danger. And psychological safety is being able to feeling safe to be ourselves, being able to speak, being able to ask questions, being able to know that I can be myself. It will be accepted. It'll be respected, and I'm free to be able to present my view or ask questions or to be vulnerable and say, look, I don't know that, or etc. It's a little bit, I don't want to go into free speech, but go into that kind of arena. And in a corporate world, if you like, workplace, people often need that safety. They feel, look, I feel I'm overloaded with work, but I don't feel safe to speak up. I have a lot of problems at work, at home, or I really need to go a little bit early. I don't feel safe to be able to speak up. And I don't understand the new program that they started, but I don't feel safe to say that I don't know. I might be seen as a stupid.
So for me, so many questions come up as you're speaking, like, I don't feel safe to speak up. Is that the same as saying I'm not confident enough to speak up?
It's a type of confidence. It's not in term. It is the confidence that driven by what I'm about to say will not be accepted. So in terms of confidence, it literally comes from doing something. And we do something, we feel safe, and the outcome of doing something then result in confidence to repeat that. So psychological safety is not knowing that I would be, what I'm going to say would be accepted or seen as a correct, or there's a lot of things involved. It can have a sense of self-esteem, self-confidence also, but particularly psychological safety is dependent on the environment that I'm in. It could be an organizational culture. I work in a organizational counseling or support area, so I hear this a lot. One of the common things that I hear is, I have some problem at work, but I don't feel safe to speak about it. So in that context, the safety they are worried about is my job is at a risk. I don't feel psychologically safe to do that. In relationships, is I don't know if I can trust my partner or my parent to be able to tell them something that I'm going with me. I don't know if I can share my emotions. They might see me as too emotional, too weak. So I don't feel safe internally to be myself, to present myself, due to fear of not being accepted, fear of being outnumbered, and so on. I hope that makes sense. Pretty much
I think that Indrani has just summed it up absolutely beautifully, and I think we can almost say that's the end of the podcast. I'm only kidding. Angela, Moana, go for it. What have you got anything else to add? And I feel like I'm taking over here as the facilitator, but boy, I've got a lot of questions.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
You go, Moana. You go.
I think Indrani has explained it very, very well. Really well. I have heard of it more recently than before. I hadn't really heard of that expression used before, but I've heard of it being used in in business environment and in corporate environments. And I do know that, yeah, one of my friends and colleagues has done a course on psychological safety, had certification on training businesses specifically in psychological safety. And she is actually a specialist in preventing sexual assaults. So I guess that all comes under that umbrella as well. But yeah, I think that's a great explanation. And until my friend had spoken about this, I hadn't really heard that term before used in a business environment. Yeah, so that's...
Ange, do you have something else to add?
Not really about the definition. I think that Indrani's covered it really well, but I can definitely say that in the last few years when I was working in my jobs that I had as an employee, I definitely had experiences where I didn't feel psychologically safe, definitely, without a doubt. And I remember in one of the jobs, I did mention it to my manager, and then it wasn't just me, and then, it sort of, she mentioned it to HR, and then there was kind of like a big thing that went on where we got interviewed, and, it sort of like prompted all this discussion around, the culture of where we were. And it was a pilot program as well. So there was a lot of uncertainty. So it was funded until a certain amount of time. And then there was all this uncertainty about, was this going to continue? Were these jobs going to continue, sort of thing? And so I think I just really had the experience firsthand of what it means not to feel safe in a sort of group environment, because it's mainly around the group environment. Mm-hmm. It doesn't just relate to a group setting. It also relates to one-on-one relationships, doesn't it? Is that correct?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, it is. And yeah. It's simply associated with being able to feel safe to be yourself with anyone other than yourself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So,
all right, so I have another question. Obviously, this has been around for a long time, but it hasn't been called psychological safety. Like, what do we know it as before this? Because like that term for me is really, what does it mean? Hence why my question first up. Mm-hmm. But what would we have known this as previously? Does anyone have an answer?
If it's to do, we had quite a lot of publicity about bullying in schools, bullying in the workplace. I'm presuming that now it's sort of somehow related to preventing any sort of bullying in the workplace as well. Maybe, do you think might have something to do with that?
Yeah, I mean, bullying was the opposite of it, sort of thing. Like, obviously, well, I do,
sorry, can I add something to that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So bullying can be both psychological safety and physical safety. So if we think about what is psychology, that's a mental processing and understanding behavior. And so when it's I don't feel safe to process things, like I don't feel safe to be able to, like, for example, if I had an answer in this panel discussion, if I have an answer that I can't present to you because I would think you're going to judge me or you're going to say something to me, you might not like it, I don't feel psychologically safe with you. So and bullying is absolutely is going to diminish psychological safety. And because when a person's been bullied, they look to themselves, they don't think I've been bullied because the person who bullying me has a problem. The person who's been bullied thinks I am the problem, so I must have something wrong with me because that's why they're bullying me. Therefore, that psychological safety is impacted.
So what do we do if we're in a if we're in a work situation and we actually don't feel psychologically safe, is that something we can go to HR with or go to our manager with? Or, you know, like, is that a term that is recognised as possibly, you know, causing someone to go off on stress leave or not want to come to work? Or are we at that point?
I would like to say yes. Most organizations are expected to have that awareness of psychological safety. Any leadership training should have been included. Leadership psychological safety is also go alongside with emotional intelligence. And we can't have emotional intelligence and not have a psychological safety. They go hand in hand. And yes, employees should be able to go and talk to their seniors, their HR, and say, "Look, I don't feel safe this way." Now, I am not sure, depending on the contract and the ward that you're working under, whether you are entitled to time off. I'm not sure about that. However, you have every right to go and say, "I don't feel safe." In fact, I have so many clients have come to us with that and saying that there is a change of management. I don't feel safe with this new manager because there's something, the way they're talking, where they look at me, whatever that may be. Now we're going a bit deeper here. So that sometimes that lack of psychological safety can also be derived by the person who feeling it. Because let's say, for example, I had a school teacher or a dad who would say to me, "Sit down," when they say that I'm in trouble and they've raised their voice. So I know I'm about to get in trouble. And if I have that traumatic experience, then I might see that my manager doesn't make me feel safe. When they come and talk to me and they ask me to sit down and let's have a talk, I'm shaking inside. I feel anxious. I don't feel safe with my manager. Now, that is lack of psychological safety there, but it's not necessarily created by the environment. So that's an internal state. So that need to be addressed when someone come and say, "I don't feel safe." It is important the leadership actually aware what is psychological safety, and that has more than one dynamics of it.
I think it's even legislated now, isn't it?
Yes.
I think that it's legislated.
It
but
is.
What I can definitely say that having had, because obviously I've been mostly in most of my career self-employed, apart from a few stints. And that one stint that I did over 3 different companies, organizations, when the HR came to me, I still didn't feel safe to tell the truth to the HR. I know they were coming to me to get the information because some, like the red flag had been alerted, but the whole experience was just so disempowering. And it was really, really interesting. Like, I've never experienced that because I mostly work by myself. I've mostly been a solopreneur all my career and then going into this. So that's definitely one example where I can definitely say I really understood what people go through in environments like that, where you're kind of not trapped, but you're sort of, your livelihood depends on this working out, and it's not working out. So what are you going to do? I mean, have you guys had lived experience at all of times when you haven't felt psychologically safe, like Moana or Sabina, or even Indrani?
Just trying to think.
Look, for me, it takes me back to school probably. But when and there are some jobs that I probably had, dotted in the beginning of my self-employment, I guess, life, that I had, where I can probably say I felt that way. But for me, it goes back to what Indrani just said. Is that me internally, or is it actually a situation that's happening for it to be real? I'm trying to put that into perspective. Was that something that I was just feeling because of something that had happened to me in the past, and I was insecure? So, was I really justified in calling it psychological that I wasn't psychologically safe. That's what I think I'm trying to put into perspective.
So Sabine, that actually, regardless of why you felt it, if you don't feel safe at that moment, you don't feel psychologically safe. Whether it came from an experience you had or because of the environment, whatever was happening in the environment triggered that lack of psychological safety.
See, that's interesting, because that, for me, raises, especially in the situation of employment, it kind of raises a few questions, because obviously there's, if it is something that's happened in the past and you've now, as an employer, have to somehow manage that, are they equipped to manage that in a way that makes everyone feel relaxed and open? Because my guess is probably no. So that's a whole new, it's a whole new, I don't know, it's a whole new space that it's almost like people have to find themselves in. And I think that's where, you know, right now there's that, we're removing ourselves from people in the way that we're all working from home. If you want to send someone a message, it's text is great, you know, or messenger. And it's, people don't pick up the phone anymore. People don't have conversations if you don't have to. You know, you don't have to pick up the phone anymore to get takeaway. It's just all online, you know. So you avoid conversations. And it's more so with the generation coming through. So I don't know, are people equipped to deal with that? It's really interesting. It's got me thinking.
Does anybody else have something to say? Otherwise, I will add I'd like to comment on that. If anyone else? Go. Okay. So Moana, did you have something?
No, I'm just saying, yeah, I'd like to hear what you've got to say.
Okay, so what Sabine is actually alluding to there is trauma-informed care, trauma-informed practice. So this is not that old, trauma-informed practice. It has been kind of evolving because we have so much more research now. So we generally, in a clinical or psychological, social psychological world, we like to think that we like to act and serve and care for people as everyone have experienced some type of trauma. So therefore, we create that trauma-informed, which means we know what trauma response is. So for example, creating an environment in a workplace, someone come and say, hey, like you said, can we report if I don't feel psychologically safe? Yes, you can report. Does that mean that you're suddenly going to go and fire the other person? No. So we need to then have trauma-informed, trained facilitator, supervisor, a leader, manager, someone to understand, okay, we need to find out, we need to take an approach to understand where this is coming from. And we also need to do that in a way we're not going to impact the person's psychological safety even more by saying, this is something you're imagining, it's all in your head. No. So we want to be able to have a language and approach how we communicate with that person. Let's find out where this is coming from. And of course, one of the cases that I had to deal with is the manager called the employee and opened the door and was having a conversation quite loud, and she was feeling quite intimidated, and the person believed the door was left open so that everybody can hear how stupid she was. Now you see, I'm not sure what comes to your mind. For me, now this could be the manager's approach that, I don't know, there's a cultural issue. The manager didn't want to be in the room with the female employee with the door shut. So that was the manager's approach because there's a cultural issue there. So you can see there's a both side here. And I'm not saying that being yelled and screaming is okay. However, so we can also interpret certain situations. So knowing this could possibly be a trigger, but we must never pass it as a trigger. We must always have. So if we have trauma-informed and a psychological safe culture in the workplace, one of the things will be we do not yell at people.
Yeah.
You do not. And one of the things that I would, if any leaders are listening, I would clearly say, try to sit with your employee or the subordinate that you are actually speaking to. The last thing you can do is let them sit and you stand with your hands on your hips and talking to this person and reminding them what it was like to be troubled as a child, right? That's how they're going to feel. When you're sitting with them, having the eye contact with them and say, can I have your permission to address an issue that really been troubling me and is impacting few of the other people? And if we can have this conversation, I really want to see what your approach is. I need your help to understand it. Is that okay? As opposed to, I have a problem. You've been going around talking to people, blah, 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 and no one likes that. We just need to stop that. And that kind of comes across, there's a lacking awareness of what was happening. And now the person might have felt psychologically not safe to start with. Now it is actually enforcing.
What I love about what you just said is that you said if there's any leaders listening to that or listening to this, this is what I would do. I would sit. I find that a lot of people that have done coaching training are learning at least the basics of communication and leadership and how to deal with these things. And coaching is like it's huge in other countries, and it's developing in Australia. And I would love for it to develop more, because when you do coaching, you learn about that, but you learn about NLP, you learn about how to recognize at least, people's where people are coming from and how to talk to them about that. I don't know about you guys. Did you learn that when you studied coaching? Or I know I did when I did my coaching training.
NLP, yes.
Yeah.
Just how to sit with someone so they don't feel threatened, and how to build rapport and just common courtesy. And I just wonder, like you were talking about the manager talking to the employee and leaving the door open. And I understand, they might have not wanted to shut the door so that if it was a female employee that they didn't feel safe, physically safe. But I just wonder, if the female employee had felt psychologically safe to just say, once the conversation started, and if there was some, if she was feeling embarrassed, if she would feel psychologically safe to say, would you mind if we have the door shut, please? I feel embarrassed.
That's right. Yes.
Other people can hear what you're talking about. And this conversation shouldn't be out for everybody to see. I just wonder, because I think we have come this far now so that someone who's on, part of a team shouldn't feel that they can't say that sort of thing to their manager.
Now, that's a really, really good point. Moana, what happened is, if I could be a little bit clinical here, like you said, that most people in leadership, I would say, learn some level of NLP. NLP is not a modality itself. It is a modality put together using lots of other modalities, CBT, acceptance and commitment therapy, narrative, all of those things. So, which means most leaders would have done one or two things. They will have awareness of it. What's missing is an emotional regulation capacity. So I do feel for both employees and employers when I work with them, because I hear both sides of the stories. And they will have this deadline coming, and the organizations could have some high risks they're facing. Everyone's accountable to somebody, and the economy is struggling, and there's lots going on, so they're under a lot of stresses. Now, although they have the learned knowledge, their window of tolerance, their capacity to cope is exceeded. They've gone beyond the threshold. When they sit with that person, they don't come to yell at them. But if you have the inability to regulate emotions, you're going to yell, you don't even realize. Now, the person who's listening in this case, you were saying, would she was she safe enough to say the door should be shut? Maybe she desperately wanted to do that the whole time. But what happened is they go into fight or flight mode, they freeze.
That's right.
Because that's what happens when we don't feel psychologically safe. We can also freeze just like we are through when there is a physical threat. So people would say, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you say something? Well, oh, well, you wouldn't have been an issue if you just let him talk to you like that. Nobody let people talk to them like that. And people can't explain why they did it because they were not in the thinking capacity at that time. They're feeling whatever feeling all they want to do is walk out and run away, but they can't. And that's same as perceived threat in anxiety.
That's amazing. And one thing that did come to mind as well when you was other scenarios, not just in a workplace, like for example, in a family dynamic, because obviously a lot of you know my background, which was my childhood and teenage was in an environment of family and, domestic violence and alcoholism and all that sort of thing and mental illness. So there was no psychological safety in the home. And so obviously as a child and teenager, you just develop all these coping mechanisms just to, survive, I guess. But so in other contexts, like at least in the workplace, it's like the government can do something about it. Try to do something about it by actually, bringing forward a legislation, and now there's all this training and other professionals are doing the training and so that's all amazing and really positive. But what would you have to say if there's no psychological safety in other relationships that people are experiencing?
I can share something personal to do with that. I feel that if a couple are experiencing difficulties and there's a heightened emotional response when one partner is trying to describe how they feel and the other partner responds defensively or something and they're not getting anywhere, there are just going to be really, really high emotions. And that's the whole purpose of going for counselling, because then the counsellor provides that sense of psychological safety for the couple until they can resolve these issues on their own and can feel psychologically safe to confide in each other and share their feelings, because the emotion has been calmed down and they've got the tools then to deal with the issues that they're dealing with. So to me, that's a huge percentage of the reason for a couple going to see a counsellor, so that they can have that psychological safety. And counsellors do talk about safety quite a bit, and they're not talking about physical safety, they're talking also about emotional safety and psychological safety.
Look, if you ask me as a business owner, there's nothing more valuable than having a community. You have, and so whether we're talking about, your, let's say you're a contractor and you're in someone else's workplace, or you're at home and something's going on at home, or wherever you might be, I think because we often don't have access to counsellors for quite some time. They're so few and far between at the moment, and if you have never had a counsellor before, it can take months to get into a counsellor right now. I think, and although community is not, your community may not be qualified like a counsellor, but it's great to be able to call on someone and just go, can we just go and have a cup of coffee? And so I think whether it's a friend or someone in your business community, I think that is one of the most valuable things when it comes to emotions and how you're feeling. That would be my recommendation, is just, and it doesn't have to be someone close. I think if, sometimes you're part of a business community and you think you're not close to the people. In other words, you don't pick up the phone and ring them, or you don't go out with them every Friday night. But I think if someone phones you and says, hey, you want to go for a chat? You want to go for coffee? you're there.
Mm.
You know, that's what business owners do for each other. I think that's incredibly valuable. We just need to learn to ask.
Yeah.
We just need to learn to say, hey, you want to go for coffee?
Mm.
It's true. It's very, and that's such a simple, profound thing.
Absolutely.
And we don't know what's behind the request. So if someone's making that type of request, it's like, you know, it's maybe listen with on two levels. Yeah.
And, you know, let's face it, a cake solves a lot of problems, doesn't it? A coffee and a cake.
Or chocolate.
Yeah, that's right.
It does.
But to me, that's the benefit of She Simply Impacts as well, because it is a safe space. You know, that's the whole, you know, the reason we don't record the sessions, and the sessions are sort of led by the person who is attending, or the people attending the sessions. So that's the benefit. It's really just having a safe space to share your concerns and to have an outlet.
Mm. Yeah, no, that is very true. And in some cases, that what is safe for someone can be different too. So it's very, like Sabine was saying, I think I really encourage something that we often do as a psychotherapist with people, is to encourage that positive connection with people. It's so important to have the social connections with people. It's as long as we're not expecting that person to, when we talk, things to be fixed, or the person to give you guidance and direction, that putting them in also a difficult position. And then you feel like you have to do something. And as long as you just, this is a company, I can be there for you, I can stand with you, I can listen to you. That's as far as I go. Now, sometimes that's all you need to do, and people can find an amazing healing. You know, it's a beautiful thing just to be heard, and a lot of people want that, and to be heard with that being told what to do.
Mm.
You know, and then if you think it is still going, is a repetition happening, or you feel it's impacting your daily life, you're not sleeping, you're impacting your social life, you feel like your days are getting longer, you're not getting productive, nothing seems to be working, and that is when you know, okay, now I need some support more than a friend. And just the being aware of that, even talking to the friend and say, hey, I'm starting to feel a bit worried, you know, about at work. I don't feel safe to talk to, and I'm worrying, and I'm anxious to go to work. And sometimes people would say to me, just getting in the car in the morning to go to work make me anxious.
Yeah.
Mm.
Walking through the door to my office door make me anxious, and that's a problem. That's when we need help.
I think that happens a lot. I actually really do think that happens a lot. Mm-hmm. And it goes unnoticed,
mm-hmm.
which is a real shame.
Yeah, so that's why we encourage people to communicate. And I think what we need to really do is help people to communicate and seek help, and how to do it. So again, I encourage, if you're working for an organization, find out what is the organizational culture, what is the organizational processes to report and to deal with situations. So it would be good to speak to the person that you have the issue with to start with again. We keep coming back to that loop. If I don't feel psychologically safe, well, I can't talk to that person. And that is what I hear every single day when I work with employment assistants. I don't feel safe to go and talk to that person. Now, quite often, we have been able to work with that person and analyze the situation, and they go, oh, I can see actually they're not really annoyed at me. This happened, that happened, and that wasn't me at all. I'll tell you an example. I had a client who I've seen for the third time, issue with a middle manager, and she has ready to quit her job because it decided that I can't work with this person. They're really, in my case, piling me up with work. Now, I often see there's two different ways to look at that. Someone's piling up work, they believe you can do it. Or there are other reasons which are not part of this discussion, so I'll leave it at that. And then third session, she said to me, my manager said that, it's been a really tough week, everything, organizations, everyone's been really stressed. I'd love to take you out for lunch. You know, and now she's literally made an appointment to talk to me to make sure that should I go or not, because what if it's up to something? But that's what psychological safe, if you're not psychological safe, that's what it does. We started to feel things, see things, and that's a lack of capacity to trust that person because of what they've been experiencing. So this is when you want to be able to communicate and say, look, I really appreciate everything, but lately I'm really struggling. I feel anxious when you come and talk to me about these things. Look, I'm just going to say this to you. I feel like I've been yelled at. I'm really struggling to function. I don't know if I can keep going this way. I am not used to being yelled at. I don't know if you mean to, but this is how I feel.
Yeah.
And sometimes doors can open. And if the person might say, oh, you just need to get a bit tough. This is the way it is. Well, then you have a problem.
Yeah.
And it is true. It's understanding it is not directly, it's directed at you. It's not intentional. So that's the first stage of understanding, depersonalizing the situation. But once again, it's important to understand it shouldn't be something someone has to put up with. So while I need to toughen up, I need to learn to manage my own stress, I need to find some coping skills, the other person also need to learn some communication skills. So both ways. And sometimes it's the manager that being yelled at.
But what's interesting is that if you're yelling, yelling is such a I know when I'm yelling and it's not who I want to be, but I used to yell a lot in my first marriage, and I'm not proud of that, but I knew I was yelling, if you know what I mean. I knew that so it's like I used to yell and then apologize, so if a manager or whoever at work is yelling, don't they realize they're yelling and then apologize? I know that just comes to my mind. Yeah, I guess it's quite complex, isn't it?
It is. I would love to see a communication subject at school taught by someone, who actually really understands communication and listening and difficult conversations and leadership and confidence and practicing that in small groups. I would love to see that in school, but
I think that's what's missing. I think a whole personal development and even coaching, like teaching coaching skills in schools, and because it's really, these things are foundational, which you have to learn the hard way type of thing. Like these are, unless you're exposed to personal development and personal growth from a young age, or it's like just not being equipped with skills like that are fundamental, and even being taught in schools about psychological safety and what it is and what it isn't.
I think there is a psychology unit now in most high schools. I don't think it's all of the schools though. I don't know what is included in that, but they are a unit and they do hone in communication. Once again, if there's a subject that they can elect, then that would be a shame. I don't believe it should be elective. It should be mandatory that we have that understanding, because we can walk out of a school with a highest degree of qualifications, and if we do not have emotional intelligence, we're going to fail in life, in relationships and areas like that. Financial success is not everything. And a lot of people who are successful are very sad, very miserable.
Emotional intelligence, what it comes down to.
Yep.
Yes.
And so the impact of, let's say, you know, like the impact of psychological safety and not having it, for example, and the impact of having it. So if you are in an environment where psychological safety is there, where can it take you? Like what, you know, because obviously it means that your potential is free to be unleashed. So what, does anyone have anything to share about the flip side of if there is plenty of psychological safety, and what is this going to make available for our growth as individuals and growth as teams and growth as families? You know, what's on the flip side of an abundance of psychological safety?
You know, it's interesting because like I watch the young kids come through, leave school and, you know, start their lives. And a lot of the time they've come through a lot of the ones that I know, they're part of amazing families. They really are. And they're amazing young people. And then they go out in the world and all of a sudden they've got this confidence because, you know, everything's great. But then occasionally they say things that you go, oh, gosh, hang on, that's a bit harsh. Or, you know, did you really think about what you said? Or did you really mean that? And I think all of a sudden this confidence comes out in a way that maybe they mean, maybe they don't. But, you know, there's always something in it. And for me, it's now coming back to emotional intelligence. Are they aware of what they're saying and doing? And maybe they feel on top of the world, but maybe that on top of the world is not for everyone. So are they aware about the different situations? Kind of comes back to emotional intelligence.
And self-awareness.
So even when you can be in an amazing place or amazing family, there's others aren't. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, self-awareness it's true, self-awareness, because once you learn more about yourself and question your own emotions and why you're feeling a certain way, and then you learn more about other people and how you behave, or maybe if you're yelling at someone, is it because of something inside of you that you can see in the other person? You're really yelling at yourself.
Yes.
Sometimes.
And the impact. And yeah. So it's like, who are we? And who are we not? And the impact of us on other people. So that's really what you're saying, Sabina. You're saying that they have no awareness of the impact, their impact on others, which is all part of self-discovery. Is that part of emotional intelligence as well, self-awareness?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is number one. Number one stage of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. And we can sometimes what happen also, particularly in relationships or in a workplace, people often talk about what other people are doing and how that is impacting them. And the place to start is what is within your control. You know, why is this particular thing impacting you in a certain way? And remembering that if we're standing under a light, you know, you need to look up to be able to see that light above you. And also, unless someone hold a mirror in front of you, we cannot see ourselves. Sometimes the mirror that in front of us is the person in front of us. How we treat them, create their reaction is the way we treat them.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and that's when we know, and we do mirror each other. You know, there's another conversation for another day about the mirror neuron, but we do mirror each other. And
yes.
When you were talking earlier, I was thinking, I think when Sabine was talking about that, saying these things in outright, not in realizing the impact it has on others. One of the things that I learned was we have these two types of communication. I say what I say, take it as a come. What you see is what you get. I speak the truth. If you don't like it, leave it. And you know, and that's obviously how they had to live. That was their life, right? So we serve, we dish out, what is in the bucket, what we carry. And so self-awareness help us to see, what do we carry? And does that what happened 40 years ago actually apply to people today in front of me? Or do I need to actually do some adjustment, change the way I speak and treat people? And when we change the way we do things, it changes the world around us, and that's the way it starts.
Yes. And so relating this back to psychological safety, so it's kind of like there's what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You know, like they're sort of very interlinked. Because if you're in an environment where there is no psychological safety, it means that you're in an environment where there's no self-awareness and people aren't aware of the impact on others of the individual behavior that then makes up a collective behavior. Is that what we're is that how it interplays?
It can have a ripple effect if you're implying to in a group environment. If one person's behavior is unacceptable or hurtful or rude or whatever that may be, if the people in that group lacking self-awareness, they're going to be reactive. If they are solid in self-awareness and their own values and their own actions, they're going to respond logically, they're going to respond thoughtfully. For example, I don't know why driving comes to my mind. When you're driving, I don't know why, me included, we are very impatient. We will just, we'd be really lovely and talking to the person on the phone and so polite and calm and gentle, like, get out of my way. That's that reaction, because why is that we're so reactive when we're in the car and then any other times? I asked that myself because it was only a few seconds that I'm getting agitated and I was wondering, I asked myself this, why is that? And I think because I'm so focused on driving, so focused on getting to that place. So my focus is just this, and everything else is kind of not a factor at that moment. And I don't know, this is the question to others actually. What are your thoughts? And when we focus on something so much, we tend to react very quickly because we generalize, delete, and distort the things that are happening around us. That's kind of
it's certainly something I can relate to, that's for sure. When you're really concentrating on something, whether it's work or a phone call and someone interrupts and someone kind of gets in your way, it's often your first reaction is hang on, just give me a second, and you've got this kind of scowl on your face and it's not pretty really. And you might not be yelling, but they may not realize that they're interrupting something important. And either way, they're going to interrupt. So you may as well make it a pleasant interaction and say, just give me a minute. Can you give me a minute or something? But you're right. It is when you're so focused on something and you get interrupted, your immediate reaction is to, what's going on here? Why? Grumble, grumble.
So it's a 10-second rule. We all have, right? This is what I try to practice myself, particularly when I come to my family. I can be so nice on the phone to somebody and then turn around and just, snap at my family. And I'm very guilty of that. And, I try to teach myself that 10-second rule. Take us in 10 seconds. Don't even have to be 10, actually. You can take 5. By the time we take a breath and breathe out, kind of shifting a little bit to our relaxing mode of our nervous system, we may not have to yell anymore. We may not have to react because we already given our nervous system reaction. That was the breath.
All it takes really is one breath, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Just take one breath.
All it takes is one breath.
And exhale as slowly as possible. And now you go, no, never mind. I'm okay now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We learned this amazing stance last night at Power Talk. So Power Talk is our public speaking group where we practice public speaking, right? And we were talking about presence on stage. And one of the things that we learned and practiced last night was how to stand on stage, especially when you're feeling incredibly nervous. So, walk up, put the weight on your heels as opposed to the front of your foot, soften your knees a little, hands by your side, shoulders back, you know, and all of a sudden you have this confidence. And it's interesting, just even that stance it gives you power within yourself to deal with the situation.
Right.
And it was a really interesting practice. And then someone pushes you from behind and you're so much more solid than if you're on the front of your foot.
Yeah.
And they can just literally push you over because you're already out of balance already. It was a very good exercise. And when you relate that to doing things in life, you know, let's say you're talking to someone and you're not really comfortable, but then you get yourself in that position, all of a sudden you are more comfortable, you feel more confident to handle whatever's being said. It was very, very interesting. I would encourage everyone to give it a go. Just give it a go. It's not hard.
Yeah.
Just try it and see how it makes you feel. But it's
Yes.
the same with that breath. Give it a go. See how it makes you feel.
Yes.
See what works for you.
Yes. And I've got a question. I think they're great tips. My question is, if someone was listening to this and they are in an environment where they don't feel psychologically safe or emotionally safe, what are some tips?
Look, I've got, in my business network group, we have got so many different people from different areas. And we do a lot of you know, donating to the community. We do a lot of community work. So we have people that we can talk to all the time. But that comes back to the community. You know, maybe you don't know those people directly, but you possibly know someone who knows someone. Depends on how far you need to go with what's happening in your space. But again, for me, it's conversation. That's my response to that. For me, it's conversation. It's people. It's community. Talk to someone. Just talk to someone.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. I mean, I was going to say communication, but similar to conversation, communication and connection. So communication, I think, solves so many things. It's when people don't communicate and they don't speak up that's when the problems start to arise.
Okay, if I can add, absolutely, I agree with you. Talking to somebody and it can also help you process what you're thinking and what's going on. So if someone's listening that they are experiencing lack of psychological safety, and if this is people are listening to it, I know there's a lot of people are experiencing that somewhere, some form or another. What you do would be depending on whether you want to distract yourself and cope with that. Then, yeah, talking to somebody is always very helpful to have someone hearing your story. But if you're looking for a solution, you then need to ask different questions. Who is that you don't feel safe with? Is your partner? Is your colleague? Is your boss? Sometimes your children. I have clients that come, they don't feel safe with their children because they feel intimidated by their children. The mom or dad who doesn't feel comfortable to ask them to do something technological because they gonna think I'm stupid, you know. And then talk to the person that you don't feel safe with. Saying, hey, I don't feel comfortable to talk to you because every time I talk to you, I'm feeling like that I'm stupid. That's how I'm feeling. When they can say, why do you feel that way? Well, when you said that the other day, they said, that made me feel. I don't know what you meant, if you meant it, but that's how it made me feel. I don't feel comfortable to come and talk to you about the problem that I had at work because you always says to me that I have to get over things. So communicating to the person, either it is home or work, maybe have communicated with the person if you're looking for a solution.
Yeah, this is how it made me feel. The word feel is very, very powerful, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And someone turn around and say, well, don't worry about your feeling. That's not real. And that happened too. It's just the way you feel. You got to learn to deal with that. And that is something that's been said too. But feeling leads to actions, and they can lead to behaviors that can be very, harmful. So we should care about feelings, not in a way that we do everything we feel, but we need to be able to have some skills, have some support, someone to talk to, some strategies, how we're going to deal with that feeling. So it's okay to feel. I'm never going to say to anybody, you shouldn't feel that way. We must never say that, because people feel it. We do, I do. It's that, what if we cannot let that feeling take over? What if there was a way that you can actually manage that feeling, just like we manage pain, headaches, and things like that?
That's such a great point. That's really powerful, I think. And obviously, in She Simply Impacts, it's about being heard, supported, and becoming unstoppable. Absolutely. But being heard, and so therefore creating that safe space so that you can actually speak and you're going to feel heard. And that's really important. So it's amazing. It's such a big topic that it's got our conversations meandered a lot, but I think it's all been really amazing stuff. And I've written something down, what you said, Indrani, their reaction is the way we treat them often. So often someone's reaction is the way I'm treating them. That's something I've taken away from this.
I just want to add to that, Angela. I don't want you to kind of always think that person's reaction is you. It often can be what we may have said something and they would be reacting to how we talk to them, how we treat them. However, it's not always the case.
No.
But the thing to remember is, when I said A, B happened, so then is the A has caused that, or there was a trigger. So that's a part of self-awareness.
Yeah.
Could I have said that different way? Is an alternate way of talking, or another way of saying. So just as something to remember. But we're not responsible for other people's reactions always. It's good to be aware we can trigger certain things in other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes the other way as well. Could I have reacted differently? Could I have heard that differently?
Absolutely.
Could I have felt differently when they said that? Yeah.
As long as the lines of communication are open, because otherwise the person who was yelling or doing whatever, whether it's in a personal situation or work situation, sometimes they don't realize how it does affect other people. So yeah, it's a matter of just telling them and communicating.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So is there anything else anyone would like to add to the conversation? It's been really valuable. I've learned something for sure. It's been amazing. So, okay, excellent. Well, thank you for tuning in and listening. And if you haven't tried out what we've got to offer at She Simply Impacts, please, try us out. It's a $7 a month for the first month. So it's very low risk, and you get access to, a group of amazing coaches and professionals, such as the four of us on the call today on the panel. So take care and thank you very much, and bye for now. Bye, ladies.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.